Greetings, it's Alex Scher for the Shelburne Freelancer. I'm at Centre Dufferin District High School today in Shelburne, and I'm here today with Neil Orford, the history teacher, who has just recently won the Government of Canada History Award for a very special project that he has done. Greetings, how are you doing today, sir?
Good, Alex.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about the project you worked on?
Well, the Digital Historian Project is a 4-credit program that we run at all 3 of the Dufferin secondary schools. It's not just Centre Dufferin, it's all 3 of them. And it takes the students out of the school for a full semester to the Dufferin County Museum and Archives, where they do, as I say, 4 credits worth of work in a single semester by conducting essentially deep archival research into the stories of Dufferin County, and most particularly the stories of our veterans. The museum has an extraordinary database of over 5,000 veteran stories, some of which are well researched and most of which are not. And our goal is to help the museum come up with a virtual war memorial, which they've already got well underway, but to try and create the content for that virtual war memorial to try and honor as many of those Dufferin fellows and girls as we possibly can. So that is sort of the long-range goal of the program. But of course, along the way, the kids pick up enormous skills, a great range of inquiry skills, all of which we try to teach in regular school, which I think we do a pretty good job of doing. But to get a chance to really drill down deeply into historical content give the kids a chance to really practice those skills. And I think they walk out very different people than they walked in.
That's one of my later questions I'll get to, but right now I was wondering, how easy is it for kids today to forget history in people's lives without digital projects like this? That's the way of the age now, I think.
Well, I think Canadians by and large suffer from cultural amnesia anyways. I don't think it's germane just to history. I think we have a very poor sense of who we are and a very poor sense of where we've come from in order to arrive at that. If there's anything sort of crystalline in their imaginations about who we are in the first place. So I think it's an extraordinarily tall task that the kids have to undertake. Certainly more demanding than their parents were asked of. Certainly more demanding than I was asked of. And I'm a few generations back now. I think what we're asking the kids to do is a big task. So I would suggest that meeting the expectations of getting a better sense of who they are is probably the first thing that we try to help the kids define for themselves. But they only can come to that by looking at our history and looking at it in a multifaceted way, not just one way. Whether that actually gets to the case of cultural amnesia that we all seem to be suffering from, I don't know. I think maybe one day in their lives, I hope that it will, but perhaps not immediately.
How do you think history is going to look for kids 15, 20 years from now in regards to books versus digital media?
Well, I would say we're in the midst of it right now. I don't think it's even 15 years. I think there certainly is a renaissance of books, and a lot of people my age are returning to books. They've had opportunities to use Kindles and things like that, and they've proven to not be particularly appetizing. For these kids, though, they are in many respects digital natives. In other words, they've been raised in the digital world, and I would suspect that they are going to continue to operate in the digital world, particularly as most of them get off to university and beyond. I think the expectation is going to be that that's where they will spend most of their time. So I don't see them having more than a passing fancy for books in the future. And that, of course, creates a real burden of responsibility for teachers, for parents, but for teachers. And the educational system is coping. I don't know if we're really leading the charge. I think we're coping in amidst all that change.
So in that way, did meeting seniors in the community make students look at seniors and people in general as people with value, people with history, people with stories? Seniors seem to get left to the wayside a lot for youngsters.
Yeah, I mean, our culture is not particularly good at looking after either young people or seniors. I have a lot of feelings about how we treat young people and how we treat seniors. Putting them together, in many cases, they have a kindred spirit between them. I think so many of these kids don't get much opportunity to have interpersonal relationships with anybody other than their friends. Grandma and grandpa may not be that old. They may not live here. If they do live here, God forbid we end up shutting them into a retirement residence at some point. And I'm not sure that in our families these kids have particularly rich opportunities for that kind of engagement. So I think this is a great opportunity to meet people from a different generation, and in many respects they get along famously. They really do, much better than they ever thought they were going to.
So what did you walk away with as a teacher? What are you going to carry on with you from this experience, having observed the seniors with the students and the students with the seniors? Well,
there's a couple of ways of answering that question. I mean, the kids, in some respects, don't have as much to do with seniors in this program as they have in previous programs that I've been a part of. This is more creating a digital content. So a lot of the time, the students are not immediately meeting seniors. What they're doing is they're reading primary resources, letters, diaries, journals, to do with veterans' lives, to do with seniors' lives. And they may, as a part of that, end up meeting the senior, or they may end up meeting the families of the seniors. But that's not actually an expectation that I have. We don't have a whole lot of senior citizens who are still around from the Second World War. We do have a few from the Korean conflict and some from later conflicts, and then a lot of peacetime veterans as well. So the first way I'd answer the question is saying that the kids are spending a lot more time learning through reading the archives, reading the documents. And they're getting a pretty strong sense of who these people are and what their stories were. If in fact it's a relationship that the kids have with the senior, and I get a chance to watch that, I'm consistently blown away by how well they link. And by the feedback that I get from the seniors, who just have had such a good opportunity to get to know these kids, and it's not members of their family. It's people who from an outside source all of a sudden pay some attention to them. And I think one of the things that so many of our seniors experience is they get older is nobody pays attention to them anymore. They don't matter. So all of a sudden you have some teenagers who think your story matters and want to know it and want to come and find out about it, and that's really powerful. So, from the first part, watching the kids work with the documents, I've walked away with a really profound sense of how great the next generation is, what kinds of good hands that we're in the future. And watching them respond to the stimulation of being out of the school and being in a very rich environment like a museum, and having an opportunity to spend a lot of time on subjects as opposed to the kind of superficial glances that we get all too often in school. This is a chance where kids really get to spend a lot of time with the material, and guess what? It's great for them, and they really rise to it. So what do we know? For me, I just walk away with really a very rewarded sense of what I've done.
So I think that maybe is it because you are teaching them and you're bringing history alive for them that they're able to experience it.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not sure that I have that much to do with it, really. I think all I do is I kind of open the door. And they're the ones that walk through it, and they're the ones that experience it. So I would always say that I think that the kids come to it with far more than I bring to it. I just create the environment for them to be able to thrive and and fortunately a lot of them do thrive and come away very rewarded people themselves. So I'm just kind of the gatekeeper on all of this, and it's great to see what they achieve once they're given the opportunities and once they're given the correct stimulation to go and do it.
Were you surprised at any time during this project by a student's observation? They're surrounded by media and war pictures on television and news coverage. Was there something that really surprised you about their observations?
Well, it's what they say. You raise a good point about being overstimulated. It's what they say in the quiet times. It's what comes out of the quiet moments that really stays with you. There were so many. I'm not even sure I can articulate a couple of them for you, but there were so many opportunities when the kids were working either individually or in small groups, but they've been deeply working on material, and they come out with some really profound insights. I do a lot of exercises with them where they're given selections of materials, archival as well as collected materials from, let's say, from the First World War, and it's the connections that they make when they're given all of these things that are really pretty profound. And without reading a lot of textual material, without reading a lot of background material, they can make some pretty astonishing connections about what life must have been like, about the experiences of individuals. Sometimes it's very emotional connections that the kids make, which, because they're teenagers and they're rivers of oozing hormones, you get oftentimes very emotional responses. But that's not bad. That's not bad at all. So I'm constantly impressed with the kinds of connections they're able to make.
If you had one message to give to others about why history is so important today, even more than, let's say, 10 years ago, what would you tell us?
Boy. Well, history is the cornerstone of education. There isn't a single subject in the school that's taught without a historical context. But I'm not sure that people have a particular historical mind anymore. And I think there's all kinds of reasons for that. We could take hours on that. I got to think about that. That's a tough question.
Do you realize that you've impacted history yourself now, having done this, affecting seniors' lives, affecting the young lives of the students, and now you're kind of creating a brand new kind of link to history? How does that feel?
I don't know. I'm giving that a lot of thought. The thing about history is it has to live. And I think it has to be presented in a context in which it does live. If it's in a book, that's great if you have a healthy imagination. But if you don't have a healthy imagination, and for whatever reason you don't have a healthy imagination, then history, it's difficult to get it to come alive for you. I think what I feel about where history is today is in many cases it's pretty latent. It's not. It doesn't come alive for a lot of people, unless they go to a movie. They go to a movie and they see the Titanic sink, or they go to a movie and they see Robin Hood doing whatever Robin Hood does. But that's somebody else's message. It doesn't really live for individuals the way it once did, and I'm disappointed by that it doesn't. And I'm disappointed that we don't do a better job in the classes of helping history to live. Even on a very basic level, I'm disappointed that we don't do that better than we do. I don't know that what I'm doing is that different from what's done in other jurisdictions around the world. I think there are lots of people who are doing this. They're just doing it in different ways. I found one particular niche, and I think I've had success with it. And I think the kids in the program and in the various programs we've run have had success with it. But sometimes it doesn't get traction until you're older. You know, when you're a teenager, you hear what you hear, you see what you see, you do what you do. But sometimes it doesn't come to you until later on. And I've had dozens of students who graduated from school and gone on and started their lives and they're doing terrific things in their lives. And they've come back later on and they said, oh yeah, you know, I really kind of start to get this now. So if anything, I hope that I've just sown some seeds, you know, that given the right fertilizer, whatever that is, one day could sprout and flourish. For some kids it happens in high school, and that's wonderful, but I think a lot of this is just about creating the right conditions in life to think historically and to appreciate things on a historical level beyond your teenage years.
Well, it's so great that you've won this award. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But finally, I think everyone would like to know, as a history teacher and as a person in the world, influencing young minds, how do you hope you are remembered?
Well, I hope somebody remembers me, but boy, I hope they remember I was fair. You know, that being in the class was not an onerous burden. I mean, they all had to do hard work, but you know, it wasn't a ridiculously onerous burden. So I hope they remember that it was fair. I hope they remember that it was fun. The experience of being in a history class was generally speaking pretty fun. I hope in this program that the kids that come out of the program and all the programs that we've done, not just this one, but all the programs we've done, come away with a better sense of being Canadian and a better sense of being you know, actively involved in the history that the country has. And I hope I have some, you know, I hope they remember that I had something to do with that. For me, it's always been about making, you know, history as relevant and as current and as important as any of the other subjects in high school. And so, if they think of me in, you know, in those terms of been the person that they had some engagement with history with in high school, I'm really happy about that. Really happy about that.
That's phenomenal. Well, thank you very, very much. This is Alex Scher for the Shelburne Freelancer, sharing Shelburne with the world.